Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick, and a client patient of mine from South Africa had told me that to deal with the current situation, the pandemic, the isolation, she decided to walk, do some walking, and then help the elderly. So I wanted to specifically talk about this form of self-medication. Being disconnected or being in nature induces a relaxation response found by research out of Japan. I'll see if I can put links down below on the effect of being in a forest for up to 30 minutes or more and having blood tests show decreased cortisol response, decreased markers of inflammation. So when you have that kind of response when you're out in nature, I mean, by decreasing those bad things at the wrong time, cortisol and inflammation markers are not good. Good for fight or flight, but we don't need that much fight or flight all the time. However, when you decrease those things by doing something or taking something, you're self-medicating. PTSD, cannabis, nature therapy, stress of COVID, social isolation, doesn't matter, but it's okay to self-medicate in those regards. But I want to give you the basic concrete reasons why it does help. So nature therapy, as I mentioned, when you're disconnected from the fight or flight news of social media, it decreases stress response. When you get out of traffic, you decrease stress response. When you slow down your thinking to forest, listen to sounds of nature, you decrease stress response. No matter what the situation is, you can create something to be a self-medicating activity. So now, are you going to have full-blown serotonin released and the same feeling that you get from Prozac, Zoloft, and Paxil with one trip to nature? Of course not. It needs to be done over and over again, but the more frequently you do it, the more regularly you do it, you don't have to do more than 5 minutes twice a day. I happen to be at Herrick Lake. It's going to take me about 20 minutes to go around this lake. But the more regular it is in your schedule, the more the brain tastes that dose of self-medication. So the self-medication is probably in the form of decreasing those stress hormones. Cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline. And when you don't have those stress hormones being turned on, what other hormone do you have turned on? Serotonin. What does serotonin do? Well, or where do you find high doses of serotonin? People taking Prozac, Paxil, and Zoloft. So this always works out to your advantage. You just have to understand the value. And that's where I think Frances automatically just reverted to that because she found value in it more so than taking another medicine. Yeah. She just stumbled upon it because it made her feel good. What I tell my hikers to do when I take them on excursions is scan the periphery, scan where you're stepping, and then look to the horizon. I'm filming with a GoPro, and there's two settings where you can have horizon leveling and image stabilization. Horizon leveling is where I turn the camera after the settings have been set. No matter how I turn it, the horizon stays flat. Pretty cool computer, but we also have that option in the brain. And the second would be stabilization. I don't want to get too sciencey, but there's something happens with the retina as somebody's approaching me and as you're walking towards them to give you momentum and direction. If you take a picture suddenly and you move it, you know, in your camera, it'll be blurred. Well, the eyes, you don't want to see blurred images or surroundings, so it's better to have that information combined, reprocessed, and presented. So you're not dizzy all the time or blurred. And that has to do with the retina, but regardless when that's turned on, and then the horizon view, panoramic view is turned on, you can actually have a calming effect. The idea would be when you move, and this is demonstrated with EMDR. That stands for, it's a psychological technique. It's called eye movement desensitization reprocessing, EMDR. And it's a technique that was discovered by a psychologist, behavioral psychologist, as she went out to take walks and found that stress response was decreased. At the time you bring up the traumatic event and discuss traumatic event, your eyes go back and forth like they're scanning the horizon while you're in the chair in the office, opened eyes. So when you do that, you fool the brain into thinking, wait, you're walking. And again, when you're walking, whether it's horizon leveling or image stabilization, your brain is moving forward. And when it moves forward, it calms a stress response. Movement forward calms stress response. That's not exactly what you get with driving a car fast or being on a treadmill because you're not moving anywhere. But again, that mechanism where the retina feeds back information to the brain tells it we're going. And when you're moving forward, say away from danger, your amygdala, or the alarm system of the brain, calms down because you're theoretically moving away from danger. You're moving towards hunting for food. So when you get out to nature therapy, the big reveal here is you actually turn off the alarm system. So those of you with panic, anxiety, those of you who just have a little bit too much of a ADD kind of behavior, this is self-medicating. So if you get out on a regular basis, like I mentioned, I think you'll find benefit. Certainly, even if you have medicines that you take, you don't have to worry about overdosing. There's no side effects to this. The elements that you can instill with lifestyle changes, by default, most people figure things out, like Frances in South Africa. She started walking. Didn't worsen the lungs. She started helping the elderly. It made her feel better, so she's self-medicating to feel better. When you feel better, your immune system works better. When your immune system works better, you can fight COVID. The last pointer is, with winter coming up, I think it's important, if you're going to do a walk, to do it in the morning. I think if you walk in the morning, like when sunrise is occurring, again, the retina will start to sense that intensity change in yellow and red. Definitely try not to open your phone. But I think that if you expose yourself to light during daylight hours and turn off things at night, you don't have to be walking around in the dark, but if you just turn off as many things as possible and then turn off your screens, or at least put the Lux protective color on your screen, I think you'll have a better circadian rhythm. If your circadian rhythm is well adapted to the new shorter days of winter, and we're starting here in Chicago already. I wake up at 5 and usually there's a little bit of sunlight. Now there isn't any sunlight till about 6:30, so that can be messing around with mind and hunger in the autonomic system. There's a sympathetic system and there's the parasympathetic system. The parasympathetic system is rest and rebuild. That's what you have to do after a good workout, after studying and cramming for an exam, trying to get those concepts to reprocess in the brain. So, or after chemotherapy, you have to rest. Rest and rebuild versus fight or flight. Fight or flight, I think everybody villainizes it, but it's actually useful, but not all the time. I mean, it's useful for fighting infection. It's useful for running away from danger. It's useful for tactically steering clear of a car accident. But if we're chronically on a lower dose of fight or flight, that brings up high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high sugar, because you have to be ready to go, and that's not healthy. And I think that leads you to also be narrow focused with your vision. Sometimes when you're focused on running away, you'll miss the other exits. And if there's an exit, an option that's coming your way to be healthier and problem solve, sometimes that fight or flight response makes you miss it. So I think when you practice a little bit of balancing and say, let's just call it fight or flight neutralization, when you balance that with a walk in nature, breath exercise, volunteering to help somebody, I think you will eventually be able to hopefully get a 1-to-1 ratio of that. But to have 10-to-1, not good. You're asking for the typical things that we find in America, Francis. High blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity, diabetes. So diabesity is what we sometimes call it. You're doing a great job. Those of you who already do nature walking or get out to Forest Preserve in Illinois, or just go around your block at the right time. It doesn't have to be speed. We're not doing this to burn calories, just getting out. So hopefully this gives you a little idea of why the concrete evidence is there for being out and slowing down and adopting a different self-medicated technique. You don't have to do power walking, you don't have to bring any weights, you don't have to bring any walking sticks. just get out. And I'd always say shut down your phone, because it's too tempting to look every once in a while and you kind of break the value of being unplugged. So do the practice, 21 days, enjoy.